Okay, in this video I'm going to just show you how you can mobilise the lumbar spine through its different ranges of motion to improve range of motion. So before you do that, obviously you need to assess if there's any restrictions. So one way you can do that, have the patient lying on their side facing you. The table height is roughly mid-thigh height. So what we're going to do, we're going to flex up the patient's knees and hips. I'm going to gently draw them over towards us, so just guide them over, let them slide towards you. So what you can see is their knees are resting on my thigh here, that's nearest their head. And from there, that gives me my hands free, so I'm going to introduce this rocking motion and then place my hands on the lumbar spine. So we know from our anatomy, if we come to the iliac crest and go straight down, then we're on L4. So if we come down, then we're on L5 and the LS junction. So from there we can introduce this flexion and extension movement. So what we're looking for, just using the pads of our fingers here, is movement or lack of movement. So you can start at the base there and then just work up. Okay, so all the way up through the lumbar spine. Obviously the higher you go up, the more you're going to have to flex the hips. So we're going backwards and forwards, flexion, extension, looking for restriction. So from there, if we want to introduce some side bending, so we can just swap the legs over. So we take their legs and put them here on my lower thigh, or the thigh that's nearest the bottom of the table. And I can just grip underneath here, so just come slightly above the ankles, so you're not gripping too much on the ankles. Have that arm nice and straight, place your hand again over the segments of the spine. So what we can do from there is we can just lean back. So what we're not doing, we're not actually bending our arm too much. You can probably get away with that if you have quite a light patient, but if you've got a big heavy set of legs, it's going to be quite hard to do. So we're going to keep nice and upright. We're just going to drop our back leg. So we're going to introduce side bending there. Okay, and what that's going to do, it's going to open out the facets on the bottom here. We can feel to see whether they are actually doing that. So from there, in order to open out these upper facets, we just allow those legs to drop away. Okay, allow them to drop away. And then our hands are just above or on this side of the patient here. Okay, and again, we're looking for restriction. So from there, I'm going to apply force straight through their femur. I'm going to put my hand flat and we're going to extend. So I'm actually pulling towards me, pulling the spine towards me whilst pushing through the femur, and the legs you can see are coming round. So we've got this extension motion. So again, I'm just moving my body as much as possible and just feeling that extension force underneath my fingers. Okay, so I'm assessing for that as well. If I place the legs back on the table, stand in front of my patient, just brace here, place my hands back over those segments, I can get a little bit of a hook round the SPs or the spinous processes and get a little element of rotation. Remember, there's not a lot of rotation in the lumbar spine, but there is some, so we can get an idea of rotation. So I'm pulling and pushing. It's a push-pull move. Okay, so I've assessed the movement and the motion. Remember, when you're assessing, that can go quite nicely into actually mobilisation and treatment. So if we go back to that first one again, we'll come into here. This time we can go a little bit lower. We can use maybe our forearm just along the sacrum there, and we can hold back or pin back on one that's particularly restricted. Let's say it's the LS junction here. So we can pin that back and then we can pull that through. We can put a really strong mobilisation or flexion mobilisation force through that. Move up to the next one and then off we go. So in time, if you practice this, you'll be able to get this really quite fluid and quite rhythmical. So just going up and down, improving the flexion and then moving from one technique quite nicely into another where we're dropping down, just meeting that barrier, that end range and working in it. Okay, coming under here and then working that side bending. Now a lot of lumbar spines need extension through them, so we're just working, that's quite a strong mobilisation force that with no real pressure on me at all. Okay, and if you find you need to linger a little bit more at a particular segment, then you can do that until you get a sense that it's started to loosen in that particular movement. Okay, if we place the legs back on the table, just shuffle the patient back a little bit. So again, that side bending, we can use our basically costal margin, if you like, just in this little sulcus, get my hand over the top, brace the patient here so they're not going to fall off or feel like they're going to fall off, hook my fingers underneath, and then I can pull, and I can use that as an assessment, and that goes straight into a mobilisation as well. Okay, so I'm using my body to do that and encouraging a little bit of movement through there, okay, all the way through the lumbars. And you can see if I just let that go and then come this way, I can drive that down and I can really open out the facets on the bottom there. Okay, and back to there. So those mobilisations are great mobilisations to, particularly if you've got a really rigid lumbar spine you need to work on first. Maybe you've done some soft tissue, then you need to get the mobilisations and then some stronger mobilisations in. Maybe the patient's in a lot of pain, so you can't put any thrust type movements through yet, or you're maybe working up to thrusts over a series of visits. So try those, try and get the rhythm going, make sure you know where your hands are and your anatomy and the contact, and any comments or anything like that, leave them below.